For 12 long years, the wind had been Eli Mercer's only companion, whispering through the sage and rattling the loose boards of his ranch house like a reminder that life kept moving, whether a man felt it or not. And every dawn found him awake before the sun, coffee black as the memories he never spoke of, boots already dusted, hands calloused by honest work and quiet grief, because loneliness settles deeper than any canyon when it's been your shadow for years. The ranch sat at the edge of the Arizona territory where the land broke open into red stone and endless sky, a place most folks avoided after the Apache Wars. But Eli had stayed, not out of stubbornness alone, but because leaving would mean admitting the land had beaten him too. On one such evening, when the sunset bled gold and crimson across the mesas and the cattle had been counted twice, he found tracks near the dry wash, light steps, careful, recent, and followed them with caution born of hard lessons. That was when he saw her standing beneath a cottonwood, tall and proud, dark hair braided down her back, eyes sharp but tired, like someone who had walked far and trusted little. She did not reach for a weapon, and neither did he, and the silence between them stretched until it felt louder than gunfire. She told him her name was Naya, that her people had been scattered, that hunger was a cruel enemy, and though Eli had been taught to fear the Apache, something in her voice carried a truth that cut through old lies. He offered water, then food, and watched her shoulders ease just enough to show gratitude without surrender. And as the night cooled the desert, she spoke of stars as if they were relatives watching over her, while Eli found himself listening in a way he hadn't listened to anyone in years. When she finally said she would move on before dawn, something in him resisted the idea, not with words, but with the ache of a man who had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. As the fire burned low, she looked at him, really looked, and said softly that loneliness had a sound, and his sounded like the wind in empty rooms. When she said, "Let me feel you tonight," it wasn't a promise of anything improper, but a plea to share the human warmth of being understood, of sitting close enough that the cold couldn't reach either of them. And Eli, startled by his own heartbeat, nodded, realizing that sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is let another soul sit beside him without armor. They talked until the stars wheeled overhead, and when dawn arrived, she was still there and so was hope, quiet but undeniable, like grass pushing through hard ground. If this meeting moved something inside you, remember to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this are born where courage meets compassion, and there's much more ahead. Morning came gentle, as if the land itself approved of the fragile peace that had settled between them. And Eli watched Naya greet the sun with a whispered prayer in her own tongue, a sound that felt older than the ranch, older than the fences, older than the grudges men carried. And for the first time in years, he did not rush the day. He showed her the spring hidden behind the rocks, the one he'd guarded like a secret, and she smiled in a way that warmed him more than any fire, telling him her people believed water remembered kindness. Days turned into a rhythm neither had planned. She helped men tack. He listened to stories of her childhood before the world fractured, and together they shared meals that tasted richer simply because they were shared. Word traveled fast on the frontier, and danger followed close behind, men who did not understand. Peace came looking for trouble, and Eli stood firm, not with hate but with resolve, while Naya faced them with dignity that disarmed more than threats ever could. When the dust settled, it became clear that survival wasn't just about strength, but about choosing who you stand with when fear comes knocking. One night, as the moon climbed and coyotes sang, Naya sat beside Eli on the porch, close enough that he could feel the steady proof of another heartbeat. And she spoke of leaving again, not because she wanted to, but because her path demanded courage. Eli felt the old loneliness stir, but this time it did not own him. Instead, he told her the land had taught him patience, and that whether she stayed a season or a lifetime, the door would remain open. She placed her hand over his, simple, sincere, and said that feeling another's strength without possession was a powerful thing. that tonight she wanted to feel the truth of who he was, not to claim it but to honor it. They sat in silence, sharing warmth and understanding, letting the night hold what words could not. And in that quiet, Eli realized that love does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes like dawn, steady and sure, changing everything without asking permission. When Naya finally left at sunrise, she did so with a promise carried in her eyes, and Eli watched until the horizon swallowed her silhouette, knowing he was no longer alone, because connection once felt never truly fades. The days after Naya's departure tested Eli Mercer in ways no drought, no storm, no armed standoff ever had, because the ranch felt fuller and emptier at the same time, every corner carrying the echo of a presence that had not demanded to stay yet had changed everything, simply by passing through. And at first he worked harder than ever, rising before the light, driving himself until his muscles burned, believing exhaustion might quiet the thoughts that returned every evening with the setting sun. Yet something inside him had shifted. The silence no longer felt like punishment, but like space, space where hope could exist without fear. Weeks passed and then months, and the land moved through its seasons, monsoon rains cutting fresh lines into the earth, grass pushing up stubborn and green, while Eli began repairing things. He had long ignored repainting the house, fixing the broken porch rail, even planting a small garden near the spring Naya had loved, not because he expected her return, but because caring again felt right. One evening, as the sky darkened with a coming storm, he noticed smoke rising near the cottonwood, and his heart quickened with a feeling he refused to name. And when he rode closer, there she was, thinner, tired, but unbroken, standing as if the land itself had guided her back. She told him her people were rebuilding farther south, that peace was fragile but real, and that she had returned not out of need, but choice, because some connections, once made, demand to be honored. Eli listened without interrupting, understanding that love was not ownership, and when she said she could not stay forever, he surprised himself by smiling. Telling her forever was not a requirement for meaning. That night the storm broke hard, rain drumming against the roof, and inside the small house they shared food, stories, and quiet understanding, sitting close, feeling the simple truth of companionship without fear or loneliness between them. When morning came, Naya prepared to leave again, but this time there was no ache, only gratitude. And before she mounted her horse, she pressed a small woven band into his hand, saying it was a reminder that strength could be gentle, that even in solitude one is never truly alone once they have been seen. As she rode away, Eli stood tall, the wind no longer mocking him, but carrying forward the knowledge that the hardest years of loneliness had not been wasted. They had prepared him to recognize connection when it arrived, and to let it go without breaking when it moved on. The ranch remained quiet, but it was no longer empty, because Eli Mercer now lived with purpose, tending land and spirit alike, knowing that somewhere beyond the horizon lives intertwined by one honest night of understanding continued forward, changed forever. If this final chapter completed the journey for you and reminded you that even brief connections can heal deep wounds, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful Wild West stories, because the frontier isn't just about survival, it's about the moments that make survival worth it.